Worrying about the smallest details and attempting to control situations can sometimes overwhelm us, causing serious anxiety issues. Dr. Gregory Jantz is the founder of the Center of Place of Hope, which is one of the top facilities for treatment of depression and anxiety in the United States. He's the author of the book, 7 Answers for Anxiety. Welcome back to Bridge City News, Dr. Jantz.
Good to be with you. And boy, what a time for anxiety.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, with COVID-19 going on right now, you say that anxiety is defined as a painful or apprehensive uneasiness. Where do you think that really originates from, and why is it so much worse for some people?
Because we've had trauma in our life. And this period we're in, and you said COVID-19, this is a period of chronic anxiety. It's kind of like a pandemic purgatory. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're kind of miserable where we are. We don't want to go back to March, and we look ahead to the future, and we're really wondering, wow, how's it going to be? And that's anxiety. Anxiety means how it has hit us physically. It's affecting our sleep. We feel anxiety or we feel fear kind of throughout our whole body.
So, Dr. Jantz, how have anxiety and depression cases increased since the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, one of the things we know is the World Health Organization tells us right now anxiety is the #1 worldwide. It's called a disorder. So it's above heart disease, it's above cancer, it's above depression. Anxiety. So we think about we have a pandemic, but we have an epidemic in the pandemic, and that's anxiety.
So what's the big difference then, in your opinion, between anxiety and a phobia?
Well, a phobia could be a specific fear. Sometimes we hear the term agoraphobia, which technically means the fear of open places. But here's what we know. Agoraphobia, the fear of going out, has increased. As we've quarantined, as we've confined, as we've isolated, we've also created a fear of going out. I mean, think about the social anxiety right now. People don't know, do I look at you? When do I wear my mask? And everything is socially awkward. I was just with a gentleman today, and he reached over and gave me a big hug. By the way, it was fine with me, but it's like he goes, "Oh no, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry." People don't know what to do, what's okay. That's social anxiety.
How about some of the anxiety and depression our seniors are feeling right now, being isolated from a lot of their family members?
Yes, there's the isolation, and virtual relationships can only go so far. And I'm glad we have those. I'm glad I can see you today and share. But we also know that we need real relationship and actual real life relationships as well. And we know that when that's cut off and cut off abruptly, we find ways to replace that. Unfortunately, among all ages, addictions are up, whether it's a digital addiction, cyber addiction, could be alcohol, and depending on where you live, alcohol sales have really skyrocketed, rotted too. But it's like 500 to 600% more alcohol sales right now.
Why do people with deep anxiety try to control their surroundings?
Any way that I can have control, it makes me feel like, some relief. You see, anxiety is all about gaining some sense of control. This is why when we first had the beginning stages of this pandemic, there was a toilet paper craze. Everybody went out and they bought in herds, bought toilet paper. You don't hear any of that now, but really that was driven because of fear. And fear, we do drastic things and we tend to run in groups. If one person's doing it, go, I have to do something because it gives me that sense of control.
Dr. Jantz, what are some of the hidden assumptions people with anxiety actually believe?
Well, they do believe, and by the way, anxiety or fear always distorts reality. It makes us hypersensitive. At times, it causes us to see things that are not there. It can cause us to be critical. We can be very judgmental because of that anxiety and fear. So one of the things you need to know is anxiety distorts reality.
So what's the big difference then between a person's objective or subjective reality in terms of managing that anxiety?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's all our perception. So anxiety is going to be anxiety, whether it's a real concern or not. And by the way, we're not to be faulted for that. That's just how it works. And you can train your body to constantly feel anxious. We're in a hyper vigilant state right now. Chronic stress, chronic anxiety, and it's like this state of anxiety we're in has put us in a perpetual state of uncertainty, and we need to understand that's going to have a physical effect. We also know that if we isolate in our relationships with others too much, anxiety will go up. We also know that it can put us in the middle of a real spiritual desert. We can disconnect spiritually.
You know, we talked about, like you said before, you using video conferencing, Skype or Zoom to be able to reach out
Yes.
to loved ones, but nothing will really replace giving somebody a hug, a loving embrace, and that one-on-one human interaction and connection. Do you think because we're lacking a lot of that, that's also heightening a lot of the anxiety levels?
Absolutely. You see, comfort comes in touch. Two ways we receive comfort: good, positive words that are comforting, and we also receive it through touch. Boy, there's a power in a hug. We know that touch alters body chemistry. That's right. It releases even endorphins, and chemistry in our body changes when we are hugged, when we're touched. And so we've got to have, humans, by the way, really do need touch. So some of that's been lacking.
Now, you said in the past that fear of the past drains the promise of the future. Can you explain that in more detail?
Sure, we may be traumatized by not only what's going on, but it could be a trigger from the past. Maybe you've struggled with some depression and anxiety. Maybe there's been some real trauma in the past. So now we're in the middle of a pandemic and it's a re-trigger. And so that past kind of gets moved forward. And that moving forward of the past amplifies our present anxiety.
Now, your book seems to suggest that we try to rewire the way we view life by eliminating negative messages. How can we really do this?
Yes, we've got to keep plugging the truth in. And by the way, it's baby steps every day. I do something the old-fashioned way. I pull, a 3x5 card. Do you remember those? I have one right here. 3x5 card. I'm going to write a verse. I'm going to write some truth. I'm going to carry this in my pocket, and I'm going to recite that verse or that positive affirmation or truth. My brain needs a way to renew. Otherwise, we keep recycling the negative. I call it ants. Ants, automatic negative thoughts.
So, how do anxieties maybe create a little bit of a life on overload?
Yeah, it keeps us in overload. So remember, anxiousness, and by the way, it's okay. We're human beings. We may have some worry, we may have some anxiety. It's just how long do we dwell in that? Because it will have implications in our relationships, in our physical well being. A habitual state of anxiety that's chronic over time lowers our immunity. We are going to see people because of anxiety that will have physical concerns. This will happen.
So, Dr. Jantz, do perfectionists tend to be more prone to anxiety? And if so, why?
Yes, perfectionist. Well, we all know one. And a perfectionist may be a person, it's all got to be just right, just right, just right. And it's never just right. Okay? That's a perfectionist. We like to do an excellent job, but that's different than perfectionism. So perfectionism can step over and be more obsessive compulsive. Obsessive compulsive means I am consumed by my thoughts and my behaviors. And this is a time right now, if you've struggled with, germs and things being clean, right now could be a real struggle. That obsessive thought, we can never get things clean enough. I'm never safe enough. And that's that obsessive compulsiveness that can come out of perfectionism.
Now, there are times in life when anxiety is a normal, healthy response to various circumstances. How can we really tell if we're overreacting?
If you stay in it over time, an initial anxiety when we receive maybe unfavorable or unpleasant news, and we're in a state of kind of a shock. We're shocked by it. And we have a period of recovery after that, of just kind of bringing back our senses and resetting. But if you don't ever reset emotionally, you will find yourself really in a unhealthy state of anxiety. Now, what do humans try to do? We try to self-medicate. I can't handle this anxiety anymore. That's where they drink. That's where they overeat. That's where we do diversion behaviors that at times are self-destructive.
The Bible tells us not to be anxious about anything. Now, that's pretty difficult at the best of times. Is
Yes.
anxiety a sin?
I don't put anxiety as a sin, but I think what we can do with anxiety could end up being sinful. If I end up being engaged in self-destructive behaviors and develop secret addictions, and I start lying and living a double life, I'm really setting myself up for some problems. So I think it can lead us down the wrong path. But you know what? We're human beings and we're going to have these experiences, but how long? I mean, right now, pandemic, this is a chance to reset or regret. You'll regret by doing certain things or not doing certain things.
So, where does one's personal life fit into the discussion of anxiety?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for us to go, where's my fears in my life? Maybe take 15 minutes, take a notepad, write down what's my top 10 fears. What are the top 10 things that just keep recycling in my mind that I'm dwelling upon? Some of those fears are things that may be totally out of our control, and I'm learning a new way of walking in faith. And maybe I need to match up God's word or a verse to each of those fears and begin to renew my mind because we've got to reset the truth.
Now, you include a very important chapter about the importance of making healthy choices. What does that really look
Yes.
like in practical terms, outside of maybe a few less donuts?
Yeah. Well, I think a practical choice goes, how well am I caring for myself? Self care. That may include things as sleep. If you're anxious, sleep could be disruptive. But here's the other thing. I just talked to somebody the other day, and I think he said he was up to about 12 cups of coffee a day.
Wow.
Well, 12 cups of coffee. He goes, I'm drinking it to soothe me. No, it's not soothing you. It's creating more anxiety. Replace that. Here we go. Have some water. Okay. Drink your water. Those are simple things. But when we're anxious, we tend not to do the simple things.
How about focusing in on God's word and meditating on his love and spending more time in his presence? That'll also calm the nerves a little bit and maybe some of the anxiety issues as well.
Absolutely. And that's why we need, maybe it's that 3x5 card again, and you're writing down a verse and you're going to go out for that 20-minute walk and say that verse out loud and watch what happens. There's a way that God uses scriptures that come alive to us. There is a renewal that can happen. Keep practicing it.
So, Dr. Jantz, any final advice for those people who are feeling overwhelmed by anxiety?
Try not to do it alone. By the way, we tend to isolate under anxiety. It may be a time to have two, maybe three individuals that you can really tell the truth where you're praying together. If you've reached a point where it's so significant you feel some despair, that's really the time, though, to ask for help. That's the time to go, okay, I can't stay here. It's not a good place to be. My thoughts are getting more irrational. So there is a season, there is a time where I need to ask for help.
You know, there's one good thing about not a lot of sports taking place right now, actually being there to watch your team. You're a little less anxious, especially when they lose, right? So maybe that's one good thing about COVID. I don't know. Dr. Gregory Jantz, author of the book, 7 Answers for Anxiety. Thanks for joining me today from Washington State.
Yeah, good to be with you.